Alright, so yesterday I did a video on the RX 5070 Ti and the RX 9070 XT in Doom the Dark Ages, and today it's the turn of the Intel Arc B580. Now I'm just going to go over the settings here. I'm doing a live recording. Oh, that's the wrong button. I'm doing a live recording this time because I'm not going to be doing any side-by-side comparisons in edit. So I just want to share the settings. 1080p here. I've got an external capture card. We are running on a 12400F CPU just because I think it is a bit of a better pairing when it comes to money spent, right? So we're using XeSS, but it is native anti-aliasing, and we are currently on the Ultra Nightmare preset, okay, using 6.9 gigabytes of VRAM here. Now, as I said, I'm using the 12400F CPU paired with DDR4 RAM, 3600 megatransfers per second, CL18. And the reason is just the GPU is priced MSRP at $250. Like, I don't think anybody's going to pair a $400 CPU with a $250 GPU. Anyway, just want to give an idea what the performance here is like. But we are below 60 frames per second at all times, and I want to get over this hill here, because over here the frame rate drops quite significantly. All right, we are dropping into the low 40s here. We might see the high 30s. Not sure. But overall, like, for a first-person shooter that is as fast-paced as Doom, you definitely want a little bit of a higher frame rate here, right? Although, I mean, it is playable. Okay, it's really not, it doesn't feel sluggish or anything. It still feels quite responsive, but definitely a higher frame rate would be appreciated. So obviously we're starting off on the Ultra Nightmare preset here, which is not the best preset for this GPU, obviously. But let me just show you the preset scaling quickly. If we get rid of that, we were seeing 43 frames per second there. There's quite a few presets here. So Ultra Nightmare, we've got Nightmare Ultra. So let's just drop this down to high and see what happens here. Let's say the preset there. We went from 43 to 45 frames per second. Okay. 46, there we go. All right, so nothing nothing to write home about there. And let's just make sure that is the high preset. Let's drop down to the medium preset quickly, and if we check our frame rate now, 51, it gets better, right? So in the 50s now. And then lastly, if we play on the low preset here, this is the only preset that I could select that actually got me to 60 frames per second most of the time, right? Other areas aren't as heavy, okay, as this specific spot. I will play a little bit and I'll just show you, but over here we're getting 60 frames per second basically all of the time, right? I think it dropped in my previous testing to around 58 here. There we go. But overall, this is definitely a much better experience. Now you can use upscaling, XeSS and FSR here. Just one thing to note is that FSR frame generation doesn't seem to work with the B580 in this game. I actually thought I bricked my game because it just gave a black screen, and it took me forever to try and get it sorted again. Eventually got it right, but don't enable FSR frame generation on the B580 just yet. You will have a tough time getting your settings back. I even did a verify and repair, which is supposed to reset your settings. That didn't solve the issue at all. And also, when I did get it working in windowed mode with FSR frame generation, it ran at 9 frames per second. It's not a VRAM issue, but as you can see here, we are using 6 gigabytes of VRAM. 6.6 allocated is 8 gigabyte, and we've got 12 gigabytes available, right? I'm going to restart the checkpoint now, but just wanted to show you the settings here. Low settings, probably your best bet, but it doesn't look particularly good, right? So what I think we should be using is maybe, let's just go to the, I think the medium preset definitely looks better, but we were below 60 frames per second here. So right, medium preset close to 60. I'm going to use the medium preset and restart the checkpoint, and then we'll just use some XeSS. All right, so with XeSS, there's a bunch of presets here, and I think it's really silly because none of these preset names correspond to FSR and DLSS preset names. I think ultra quality is quality, but now I see ultra quality plus as well. So let's just go with ultra quality, which I do believe is 67% render resolution scale would be the same as DLSS and FSR quality, right? So this area over here is slightly less demanding than the one we just tested. So XeSS quality, well, XeSS ultra quality, which would be 67% render resolution scale, 1080p, and on the medium preset, and we are getting between 80 and 90 frames per second here. Now I'm just going to get to that more demanding area again just to see what happens. But I do this run so that I can show you that like the performance doesn't stay consistent throughout, just so that you know what to expect, right? This is actually a very demanding area, this, but you can see we're definitely not hindered by our CPU at all. Our GPU usage is stuck at 99% all the time, which is perfectly good. And basically, I mean, all Doom games have been very GPU heavy, and you can run them on a potato CPU basically. Now if we have a look at our frame rate, you're definitely much better than what we saw previously, getting 80-ish frames per second. The frame time graph is exceptionally smooth, and if we had CPU issues, the frame time graph definitely would not look like that. Our lows and our 1% and 0.1% lows are actually very commendable. Yeah. All right, so I think, I don't know, there's not much else we can test here at 1080p, right? So this is basically all I wanted to show you. So let's actually see if we can get playable frame rates here at 1440p. All right, we're now at 1440p, and again we are on using XeSS ultra quality preset here. This time we can go down all the way to quality, which would be similar to balanced, other upscalers, right? And we are still on the medium preset. Okay, so I just wanted to get a baseline performance here, see if we can stay above 60 frames per second. And in this starting area we are, which is pretty good to see. The game actually feels very good. I have to say that in my previous testing as well, when I started using frame generation on both the 9070 XT and the 5070 Ti, even at 4x MFG with 5070 Ti, the input latency was very good. There was really no issue with that. Even here now at 60-ish frames per second, the responsiveness of the game is definitely it's good. I'm not gonna lie, it feels very good. But we are dropping 50-ish frames per second here. It is actually doing quite well, because as we've been seeing with the Arc B580 GPU, it is kind of, I don't know if it's CPU limited at 1080p, because our GPU usage is stuck at 99% at all times, right? But dropping down to, or going up to 1440p from 1080p does not have that big an impact on the frame rate, right? Now you can see we're basically between 50 and 60 here all the time, which is definitely not horrible. So I want to see if we just go to what would normally be known as balanced, which is still fine at 1440p. So we'll go XeSS quality, right? I think that would be 58% render resolution scale. I don't know. I didn't keep up with Intel's naming. Right, so if we run around in this area, I'm going to progress a little bit further again. We are staying at around 60-ish frames per second, right? Let's see if that changes, if there's enemies. I want to try and get a better gun here. Let's see what happens if we go over here. I don't think the frame rate would drop too much, right? During action I haven't really noticed a lot of frame rate drops at all, but we are still doing 60-70-ish frames per second here. It's a decent-ish experience, right? I'm not going to lie, it's definitely acceptable, and it still looks plenty good at 1440p on the medium preset. Unfortunately, you're going to have to use something like the medium preset, and you're going to have to use upscaling unless you drop down to the low preset, right? And I do think that it's definitely better to use upscaling even at 1080p than to drop down to low preset. That was my personal opinion, of course. Right, so we're averaging 71 frames per second here, perfectly fine, perfectly playable. And if we had FSR frame generation working, We could have used that to get a high refresh rate kind of experience without the benefit of low input latency, but unfortunately it's just not working. So 70 to 80 frames per second here. Lows are pretty respectable as well. I think it is quite good. All right, so I'm going to do one more test here. I'm going to see what we need to do to get a playable experience at 4K. I'm going to leave it on the medium preset. All right, I think let's go to, would balanced or performance? No, balance would probably be performance for DLSS and FSR. Let's see. Actually, not horrible. Okay, so we are using XeSS balanced here, and let's just get to a little bit of a more demanding area, and we'll see. It does drop into the high 40s here as expected. I mean, it's definitely not a 4K GPU. We're not running out of VRAM. We're using 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which is perfectly fine, right? So it's not the end of the world. And I mean, it looks fantastic. There's no doubt about that. Even on the medium preset at 4K, it looks great. But it's definitely not what I'd call an ideal Doom experience, unfortunately. Let's see, I'm just going to get to another area and see if we can actually get 60 frames per second using either performance or ultra performance upscaling. I think ultra performance should get us there, although over here it is once again a little bit of a more demanding area, right? So 40-ish frames per second there. So let's see, I'm just going to leave the frame rate counter up there. If we drop this down to ultra performance, I think it's going to look horrible, but let's see. It actually does not look terrible. Okay. Remember, XeSS also uses AI upscaling, so it is better than FSR 3.1, which this game supports. Now, the reason why the game doesn't support FSR 4 is because FSR 4, as far as I can tell, is not supported in Vulkan games, and Doom obviously runs Vulkan. So yeah, you can see we're getting 60-ish frames per second at all times, even with quite a lot happening on the screen here. Let's just see. Okay, so it does drop below 60, but definitely not a horrible experience. So if you do have a 4K monitor that you want to drive with your Arc B580, it's entirely possible, I think. I mean, you have to make some sacrifices, like play on medium preset and use the most aggressive upscaling you can, but I do think it's playable. I honestly wouldn't mind playing like this. 60 frames per second, upscale to 4K, still looks plenty good, I think. That's just my opinion. Alright, so that's going to be the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.